Hello everyone and welcome to another video. I am Simply G and today I'm going to be showing off everything that I got for this first month of the year, January. A little bit of merch, one anime release, and then lots of manga. Namely a lot of manga and novels as well, just because almost all of, at least two and a half weeks of my December orders just didn't reach my local comic store until very this past month. So I ended up with really about 6 weeks worth of books all at once. So that's why there's so much here. But rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll get straight into it and I hope you guys enjoy. First up, we have some merchandise. This is actually from the Mononoke Kickstarter, Mononoke film Kickstarter. They haven't put out, they haven't finished the film yet, so they haven't released or posted the Blu-ray. That was what I backed, but they did send a lot of the bits and pieces of merchandise that came with my particular, pledge level. So the first thing in that was a really nice t-shirt. Actually, it fits well. I got a medium size with this graphic on it, and then it has this little additional graphic on the back there. Really, really well done. Very high quality cotton. I look forward to wearing that. I also got what is called a tenugui cloth, I believe. And so this is just pretty much a long piece of cotton. They're very often used in Japan for, as a bath towel or for tying back, whatever, your hair, all sorts of things. You can use it for parceling things up. I have a couple of these actually already. I have one from Not So Nice Book of Friends, and I have one from Haikyuu, and they're actually really handy, so I was very happy about this one. And then finally, for this round of, rewards for the Kickstarter, is actually a series of art cards. Comes in this envelope like so, and I believe there are 15 postcards from various artists celebrating the 15th anniversary of the Mononoke franchise, which is also part of the reason why this film is being made. I'm a big fan of Mononoke. I've loved it since I first watched it, which was many years ago. I am planning on buying the discotheque anime release. And yeah, so when this Kickstarter was announced, it was a no-brainer for me to support it. So those couple little extra merchandising things are just cool little extras for that. Although, of course, the most important thing is the film itself, and I look forward to that actually being delivered sometime, hopefully this year. To the anime, I only got one release this month. It was kind of clearance sales or Boxing Day sales actually, which are the day after Christmas. In saying that, they usually run till New Year's, so I picked this up and it didn't post until later in the year. But this is probably the first thing I got for this year. I've seen it. I've since watched it and it's okay. This is Lupine III the First. It's Showtime. This is the Blu-ray release from Hanabi, so Blu-ray disc only. And this is it's a CG Lupine III film. I had heard fairly positive things about this. I knew it had a theatrical run, both in the US and I believe the UK. I don't think it was ever in cinemas here. If it was, I personally didn't go see it. And And I'm not like the most devout Lupin fan. I have seen a little bit of the larger like anime franchise. I own and adore a woman named Fujiko Mine. I've seen parts of part 5. I've seen the kind of film trilogy that was fairly recent, but I haven't really taken a deep dive. I've seen Castle Cagliostro, obviously, but yeah, it's not like one of my ride or die franchises or anything, but I do enjoy the franchise as a whole. I do like the characters. And this film was good. I'm not gonna. It wasn't bad, and it looked really nice. It's certainly one of the nicer looking, or kind of to par with, you know, modern CG film, which was interesting to watch this month because there has been so much discussion about CG usage in anime, just thanks to the new Trigun series and all sorts. You know, CG has slowly become more and more prominent in anime, and that can be a pretty divisive topic, but this film looked fantastic, which was not really a surprise considering it's a film, so it has a larger budget than a TV series typically does. Anyway, story-wise, it was... I'm not going to say it was a typical Lupin caper. I don't think it was. It felt more like it was trying to be an Indiana Jones movie, which isn't inherently bad or wrong, but it's not like as Lupin-y as, you know, some of the other films have been. But it was still good. It was interesting to see these characters like within this kind of animation style. They actually looked really, really good. And, you know, overall it was a fun time. I don't necessarily think I will rewatch this film. So I think it's going to probably go to my donate pile, which is fine because I don't think I even spent like $10 on this. It was very cheap in the sales. So yeah, you know, I took a chance and it was like, I'm not going to say I disliked it, but it's probably a one and done watch for me. To manga. So part of the reason why, as I said, I have so much manga is because I've had months and months worth of titles, or weeks and weeks, I should say, of titles finally show up. Although in this case, it is kind of months and months of titles. And the numbers were really boosted because I got one particular series. I got the entirety of it all at once. I know that some people got some of these volumes earlier in other countries, namely the US. But I just don't think they were ever sent out to international stores until, you know, the last couple weeks. And this is Udon Entertainment's release of Summertime Rendering. This is a supernatural mystery kind of time loop manga by Yasuki Tanaka. This is the hardcover release. They have already also, or kind of concurrently, they also released a softcover release. This also got an anime adaptation, which I think now is finally on Disney Plus for streaming, and probably other places in other parts of the world. I haven't watched the anime yet, but this is a, I believe, 13-volume series in its entirety in Japanese, released in this omnibus format, obviously, from Udon. It's also one that I have already read the entirety of. It was a title that was available on the Manga Plus app and website. It was one of their exclusive titles for a long time. And so when it finished, and I read it that way, it did have all the chapters available back then as well. I think they have since been taken down from Manga Plus after Udon got the license, which is a little bit of a shame, but this I really enjoyed. There's a lot of action, a lot of great character building and things like that. So this is the story of our main character. He is, Shinpei is his name. He's returning to his hometown, which is on a tiny, tiny island. And he's doing so because of the unfortunate news of his best childhood friend. She has recently died. And so he's going back for her funeral. And so he's kind of reconnecting with all of these people that he's grown up with, but he hasn't really been at the island for, like, after middle school, or kind of when he decided to start high school, he decided to go to the mainland. So he hasn't been back for a couple years. And so people have grown up and changed, and the town, small towns don't change that much despite everything. So it's him reconnecting with, the people that he knows and is very familiar with, despite having had this physical distance from them for a long time. But when he gets there, he actually runs into a girl, or who seems to be this Ushio, who is the girl who has died, who is a spitting image, acts like it has all of her memories. So he's really like, what the hell? And there's a question of, like, is she a ghost? Is she real? And so thus things start happening. More and more people start dying and disappearing and acting strange, and it's up to Shinpei, our main character, who finds out that he has this ability to go back in time and change things, or kind of restart from the beginning and change things. And so now he has been asked by Ushio to kind of go back to the beginning, and save, notably, her sister, her younger sister. So it's really, really good. There's also a very popular mystery novelist, who Shinpei who's this character here, who has also come to the island for various reasons. And so the more that they find out about the situation and what's happening, the more that they realize there is some evil that they need to defeat. It's really, really good. This is a series that is just absolutely captivating. It's one that when it was still available, I read all of the chapters, which were probably like 45 or 50 chapters out of 80, all at once, and then I followed it week to week, it was week to week or fortnight to fortnight. Really, really good. And even though it isn't a mystery, I don't think it's one of those mysteries where, like, once you know the twist, it's not interesting anymore. It's one of those things that it has this mysterious element to it and to this mystery. But once you do kind of figure out what's going on, there is still a lot more happening. So it is worth rereading. It's not just like, oh, this was only entertaining because I didn't know what was going on. I think that Yasuki Tanaka really writes tension really, really well, atmosphere. There is, especially early on, a little bit of fan service. Obviously, our main character, or the main female character, she's in a swimsuit the whole time. But there's bits and pieces of fan service there. It's never too egregious, and I don't think it ever impacts the story negatively. But, just be aware that is there. But really, these characters are really, really interesting. The hometown kind of vibe of both the positive and negative aspects of that is really, really well done. I just really enjoy this series. I look forward to watching the anime now that it is finally available for streaming on various platforms. This is a really good one, and I encourage people to try it. And I think Udon recognized that as well, because prior to all the absolute crap that is the pandemic, they were planning on releasing these books in 2 batches, so you could get the first 3 all on the same day, and then the second 3 all on the same day. It's a series that you want to binge read, and I thought that was a really smart business decision. I also found it interesting that they were releasing both hard and softcover concurrently, at the same time, which allows, obviously, for collectors to pick up the hardcovers, but those who might not be as interested or care as much or prefer just softcover editions anyway, they have that option as well rather than having to wait. It's just a really interesting approach that I hadn't seen done before. But yeah, I really look forward to hearing more people talk about this series, because it is one that, as I said, reading it was such a great time, and I've always really enjoyed this series, and I do recommend it. The other debuts for this month, we have a couple one-shots or single volume releases. The first one in standard size from Viz is Tatsuki Fujimoto's Before Chainsaw Man 17 to 21. This is just a collection of, I think, four or five short stories from Fujimoto, obviously the creator of Chainsaw Man. It's in the title, not in the Japanese title, but it's in the English title, because obviously Chainsaw Man is a huge and popular series, Fire Punch less so, but it's certainly a selling point in so far as making that Chainsaw Man connection. There's, like with any short story collections, there are ones that are stronger and less strong. The final short story about a vampire and a hitman is really good. The story about the kind of godly teacher, well, actually I enjoyed most of them. Well, I enjoyed all of them, but I think the final story is probably the best. It's just typical Fujimoto fun, craziness, schlock. It's hard to talk about Fujimoto because it's very easy to dismiss, and obviously short stories are a very different beast compared to Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man, his longer titles. It's very easy to dismiss his works as like just juvenile popcorn, fun. And they are absolutely that. You need to have this openness to kind of crass humor and, pulpy action schlock, but it's not, but at the same time, there is like actual inherent, very important, strong messages, theming, whatever else in them. A lot of those stories ask pretty self-reflective questions, which we see a bit more in longer one-shot stuff like Goodbye Eri and Look Back, which obviously Look Back really brought people to kind of re-examine Fujimoto's work, which I think is a good thing. But again, I don't like to say that, those are inherently better than Chainsaw Man or Fire Punch, because although those have more of the crass humor, more of this, just like action, schlock, pulpy, fun, dumb elements to it, it doesn't mean they're any less inherently like very important and self-reflective and very, very nuanced as to character stuff. Anyway, I don't really know if I need to explain that or argue that for a lot of my viewers. I've been a fan of Fujimoto since starting or reading Chainsaw Man a while ago, and Fire Punch as well. It is not going to be for everyone, but if you are a Fujimoto fan, this is worth checking out. If you haven't tried his works before, I would recommend something like Look Back. Look Back is the place to start. And then if you are interested in more of his works, I think this book, 17 to 21, is probably a better reflection of like his quirky weirdness, and kind of juvenile and action focused stuff, rather than Goodbye Eri, which is fantastic, but that is more a reflection on, I guess, the creative. I mean, so is Look Back, but I think that's more of a direct reflection on something like Chainsaw Man. So it has, I think, a bit more impact and nuance, as well as his other short story that he's done, much shorter short story, as a response to the popularity of Chainsaw Man. So if you haven't read Chainsaw Man, I do think that's kind of better to wait to read till after Chainsaw Man. But that's just my kind of biased take on it, because I've read all of his stuff and I read it as it comes out, and I know that, you know, it's a lot to read if you're not inherently that interested, or you're curious but you don't want to dedicate a huge amount of money or time to it. I would recommend all of Fujimoto's works that are available on the Viz app, which is all of them except for I don't think this short story collection is, but Goodbye Eri, or Sayonara Eri, and Look Back are both available on the Jump app. Chainsaw Man is mostly available on the Jump app. I think there's one chapter that's relegated to the website. And Fire Punch is available to read on the website. So you can actually read most of his stuff, if not all of his stuff, through legal means without, you know, having to shell out for the books. And if that is something you're interested in doing, I do think it is worth reading his works. Completely opposite end of the spectrum. Also from a creator that I really, really enjoy. This was a real surprise license, but I'm very, very happy that Kodansha released this. This is Love the Answer by Uta Isaki, sorry, from, as it says on the cover here, from the creator of Mine-kun is Asexual, and a couple other doujin works, all of which are available, or at least a handful of them are available on Irodori Comics. That's how I read them, and Mine-kun is Asexual is fantastic. Probably their most popular work, but all of them have been great. This is the story of a university student, a girl who's just started university, and her discovering asexuality and kind of acceptance of that. She is asexual, or at least she's kind of going through this process of self-discovery, but after a lifetime of thinking she's, you know, broken for not being interested in romance or sex, namely sex or romance. She's a, you know, aromantic asexual as of like how she looks at it in this book. So she's not really even interested in any kind of romantic relationships, and her kind of process of meeting other people who not only are like her, but who understand her. She makes friends with another student who is alloromantic asexual, so he is actually interested in like a romantic relationship, but he's not comfortable or not interested in the sexual aspect of that. And she also makes some just other friends in university who aren't asexual. One who is a gay man, the other, she's just like a full-blown fujoshi, but they become very fast friends because they are very accepting of her and they're willing to allow her to kind of explore herself without judgment. And then, yeah, just kind of this, and the reason she chose this university is because she wanted to do psychology, to understand love, basically, because she thought that was something she could teach herself so she could be quote-unquote normal. It's really, really good. If you know anything about Isaki Yuta, a lot of their stories focus on various sexualities, but asexuality seems to be a big one. Obviously, Mine-kun is asexual, is about asexuality, but her other stories, one is I guess a Yuri, a reflective Yuri, but after reconnecting the characters in that story, one of them turns out to be a trans man. So there's like a lot of variation as to this exploration of sexuality and gender identity in their works. So if you are looking for some asexual representation with a pretty nuanced look on this kind of self-discovery and those sorts of things, I do think that both this and Minekun is Asexual is worth checking out. And yeah, it was a real surprise, as I said, when Kodansha licensed this. It's not one that I would have expected people to be interested in. I know that probably Minekun is one of Irodori's more popular non-explicit titles that they have on offer. It certainly did the rounds when it first came out. When I read it, I reviewed it as well. You can find that somewhere on the channel. And I really loved it, and I'm sure a lot of other people really loved it. And it was nice to see the jump from like a doujinshi mangaka, dojinka, to like a more I don't want to say legitimate, but like an actual larger reach manga like this, available from a major publisher. So yeah, check it out if you're interested in LGBT manga. I'm not going to say own voices manga because I'm not 100% certain on like Ura Isaki's gender or sexuality. But considering the types of stories that they tell, I would have a pretty strong suspicion that they are within the queer umbrella. So, check it out if you are interested, and it is well worth reading. We have one finale. So one series ended this month, a series that I really enjoy, and it was actually on my pick for last year's top 5. One that is very, very specific to my tastes and interests, and that is Volume 3 of Lost Lad London by Shima Shinya. This has been released by Yen Press, and this is a murder mystery about the mayor of London has been murdered on the tube, and young university student Al is kind of being set up as the culprit. And this is no more clear than when he discovers the murder weapon in the pocket of his coat. And so when he is approached by one of the detectives, obviously trying to figure out this very high-profile murder, Detective Ellis, who's, one of those, he's always causing problems, and, he's 2 days away from being fired from the force, but damn it, he does good work. One of those, like, old grizzled detectives from from TV or novels, who is very, very adamant about fair treatment of suspects, and most notably the systemic inherent racism with law enforcement in the country, in the UK, or in a lot of countries, most countries, but namely this is set in London, obviously. And as a minority himself, and having experienced a previous case wherein a minority suspect was kind of falsely accused and ended up being charged for a pretty serious crime and ultimately taking their own life. He's really been haunted by that, so he's like sworn for that to never happen again. So he's trying to get down to, the realities of what this case is and who the real culprit is. And so he, rather than reporting Al to his boss or to the wider police team, he is trying to help this kid figure out what's going on, who the real culprit is, why anyone would want to frame him, and what his connection really is to the former mayor, or former mayor. This is really, really good. I love Shima Shinya's artwork. I love just the world that has been built. I really think there's a real love for not only the genre, and is fair in kind of picking out the inherent issues with modern all law enforcement ever, but we've seen this week, racism is still abundant, sexism as well within the police force and outside of it, right, is just so abundant. The victims that are deemed lesser than, or the rush and struggle to solve a case when it is so high profile, ultimately leading to with police like hyper focusing on certain suspects whether or not they've done anything. It's something you see time and time again in real life as well as in fiction, and I think that Shima Shinya does a really good job at like calling that out. Obviously, this is a series about like one of the main characters is a police officer, so if you just don't like stories about that, this is not going to be for you. And in real, like, we know that the police, ACAB is a real good thing to believe in. But as someone who has always also really enjoyed murder mystery in fiction, true crime to a certain extent, this is also something that I can read and enjoy whilst recognizing that, like, hey, this is not what actually fucking happens in real life, because people are the worst, and police officers are some of the worst of them. This was a good series. I'm not going to say that the mystery was like difficult to figure out. But I also don't think that was the point. It's much more a character piece on Al and Detective Ellis themselves as individuals and as like kind of, I don't want to say partners, but and how much they've changed and grown over the course of the 3 volumes. Solid ending. As I said, not really a surprise as to who the real culprit was and their motivations, but it is worth the read if you do like British murder mystery. It's worth checking out, and I really hope we see more work from Shima Shinya. I love their art style and would really, really look forward to any other titles they were wanting to write. To the ongoing titles, the first being a series that is always a wait because these are omnibus, but they all are always worth the wait, and that is volume 13 of Vinland Saga by Makoto Yukimura. Second season of this anime has just started on Netflix, and I am watching that. This is a fantastic series about vengeance, but also redemption, and trying to just survive in a horrible world. Obviously set during the Viking era, most notably the Viking kind of occupation of England and a lot of Europe. But we're following Thorfinn and the many adventures currently with his crew of, his motley crew as they look for Vinland, the mystical, magical place, told in legend. It's great. It's fantastic. I love this series so, so much. I think it's a series that overall, when the prologue ended, which was actually just what like the entirety of season 1 is, it changed tack very, very quickly. And I know at the time when that was releasing manga-wise, people really like disliked the change, because it changed from Thorfinn being like this badass fighter, dual-wielding knife kid to like a very battered literal slave working the lands with horrific traumatic dreams and this real self-hatred for all of the pain and suffering that he had caused. And so I think some people more attach themselves to the story of vengeance rather than the story of Thorfinn, wherein obviously the first part of his story as a moody teenager was vengeance. But as he got older and more experienced and more exposed to the world and the atrocities that he and others were committing, gained that real guilt and just hated what he had become, and then obviously became more aware of his father's guiding words of, never take revenge, or never, lift your sword in anger, or whatever the hell it is. It's a really fantastic series. I love Makoto Yukimura's works. Planetes is also fantastic. This is one that I don't really think needs to be introduced. Most people know it. If not the manga itself, they know the anime. It is well worth the read. And again, as I said, although it does take a little while for these books to be released, it is always worth it. Just a fantastic series and definitely worth a look, especially if you like historical fiction. Next, we have Volume 3 of Viz's release of Kazuo Umezu's Orochi. This is a horror anthology series. I think the fourth one is maybe the last one. Fourth or fifth one, I don't really remember. These are the perfect editions, or the kanzenban, I would presume, from the Japanese. This is Umezu's, hopefully viewers of this channel are aware that I am a big Umezu fan. I'm a big horror fan, but not so much a Junji Ito fan, which seems to be very synonymous with horror manga in the West up until now, because now we're getting more and more manga, more and more horror manga that isn't just Junji Ito. Umezu is just a master within the horror genre. One of Ito's primary just kind of inspirations. This is, as I said, it is an anthology. It's basically each chapter is a self-contained story, aside from the repeating character of Orochi, who basically just observes what's happening in a very like cat-eyed boy-esque way, or even oh my gosh, what's her name? Tomoe, which is Ito's. Tomoe? Am I completely? I believe Tomie. Tomie is Ito's kind of version of this, I guess. Although Tomie isn't really the observer, she's the one causing all the problems. And Orochi causes issues, but is less of like trying to mess with people's lives. But this is a horror manga. It does have a very particular art style. If you've read The Drifting Classroom or Cat-Eyed Boy, or Reptalia, that is a very, very old release, then you might be familiar with it. But I just love Umezu's style. I think it has fantastic atmosphere, is so expressive, and just captures the horror that is trying to be shown in a phenomenal way. Plus, I just kind of love this old, I don't want to say shoujo-esque style, but ultimately that is very much what this style is evocative of. Fantastic horror manga. Can't wait. I haven't actually read this one yet, so I can't speak to the quality of the stories inside, but overall, if you are an Umezu fan like I am, I'm sure you're very happy to be getting these releases. I cannot wait for the Cat-Eyed Boy release. I am so excited for that one. They have announced that they're re-releasing it in a Kanzenban or perfect edition like this. Yeah, check out The Drifting Classroom, check out Orochi, and absolutely check out Cat-Eyed Boy once it is released. For hardcover manga releases, ongoing manga releases, and hardcover just generally, we have Tales of the Kingdom, Volume 2 by Asumiko Nakamura. This is another Yen Press title. I think there's 3 volumes in Japan, and it's technically ongoing, but this is one that kind of is a very slow release in Japan. This is phenomenal. I loved this volume. We get the continuation and kind of the completion of the Xiao and Dao stories, which were introduced in the first volume. For those who don't know, this is a series, kind of like a very low fantasy series, about brothers, namely, a lot of the times twins. The 2 major story arcs have been about twins, but the King and His Aide stories, I don't know if they are twin brothers or if they're just brothers. But a lot of these stories are about fate and kind of being twins, namely identical twins, and kind of how that shapes your life, how that shapes the characters' interactions and their fates. And it is so good. I love Nakamura's work. It's so moody. I love her art style. I love just the atmosphere. And it's just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. I highly, highly recommend this series. I will say, Nakamura does always skirt the line a little bit with certain themes, and the first volume does have incest in it. This volume does not, but it's kind of we talked about it in the podcast because this was also another series that was on my top 5 for last year. Ray and I both really enjoyed this one. And this is one that, like, yeah, it has incest, but it's like aesthetic incest. So, like, if you're not weirded out or, like, put off by just, incest in fiction, check this one out. Or if you're a Nakamura fan and you're not too picky about those sorts of things, then absolutely get this one. It is beautiful. Oh, and it's just so good. And this second volume was phenomenal. Really, really, really effective with the storytelling, especially, again, with that Xiao and Dao storyline. And I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. To the large trim, soft cover ongoing releases. The first is a series that I absolutely adore. We're heading into the end of the series with this volume. I think there's only 12 in the full run, but this is volume 10 of Matsuri's Phantom Tales of the Night. This is a really, really beautifully atmospheric, moody yokai kind of mystery horror series. It really started very episodically, wherein each chapter kind of focused on a different character, but very, very quickly established recurring characters and became much more of a linear story. So if you weren't super jazzed about the first volume or so, where each chapter is kind of disconnected, aside from the innkeeper and his 2 aides. I think honestly, within the second or third volume, it becomes more clear that, hey, these characters, not just those 3, but a lot of these characters, we are following them. There's recurring storyline here, and it's not just it's not a Natsume's Book of Friends story wherein each chapter focuses on a different yokai's problem. it really does come back to the same characters over and over again. And even that first chapter, that character, he is a very prominent character in this. Like, almost all of the characters have come back again. This is a fantastic... Again, this is a series very specifically made for me. I love the moodiness of it. The art style is phenomenal. It's very much... Like, I think if you enjoy kind of... shoujo or josei horror, stuff like Pet Shop of Horror, then check this one out. It is really, 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 really good. It's got a lot of like very creepy and disconcerting and uneasy elements to it. It really leans into that uncomfort that you have when you're dealing with kind of the supernatural, when you're dealing with things that aren't quite human. It's so good. And man, cliffhanger on this volume. I cannot wait for the next two. Obviously it will be over then, but I'm really looking forward to finishing the series and enjoying it, and then hopefully being able to reread all of it, because this is... I don't necessarily think this has a very broad, wide appeal to a lot of people, but again, if you do like something like Pet Shop of Horrors, or Holic is another great example of it, it's good. It is really, really good at the specific things that it's wanting to be done. And if you are anything like me, or if you typically have tastes like me, you like yokai stories, you like horror, or twisted stories about inhuman characters, and the gray morality, of when supernatural beings interact with mere humans, definitely check this one out. It is so, so, so good. Next, we have another Yen Press release. That previous one was also from Yen Press. A lot of Yen Press this month, just because I think those were the books that got held up the most. But this is volume 4 of Heterogeneous Linguistica by Salt Seno. This is an introduction to interspecies linguistics. This is a kind of slow life iyashikei about a human linguist who has gone to the kind of supernatural world, I guess, and is trying to learn about the various languages of all of these fantastical creatures, werewolves and minotaurs and harpies and lamia and all sorts of things. So, and he is doing so with the help of the half-human, half-werewolf daughter of his university professor, or his teacher, or whatever. And yeah, it's basically him traveling around and learning about not only the language of these various coexisting supernatural creatures, but also just the culture, and obviously how language forms around culture and forms around just the physiology of certain things. You know, some of the characters write with smears of color, because they perceive color in a different way than humans do. Some of them are non-verbal and have to use like a tapping rhythms, things like that, or body movements. Werewolves, for instance, they have a verbal language, but they also like have a further aspect to it, wherein scent is obviously huge. It's really, really good. It's funny. It's fun. This is very in line with a lot of, like, it is sort of a comedy. It is comedic. I wouldn't say it's as funny as something as like Delicious in Dungeon, but it does remind me very much of a lot of these fantasy series that are focused on like a mundane aspect of the fantasy world. So I do liken it a lot to Delicious in Dungeon. Even something like Drifting Dragon or Witch Hat Atelier, I think kind of fits within this category. Those are a little more plot focused. But if you like series that aren't just like, which are, if you like Iyashikei and you like fantasy series and you like stories that focus on kind of mundane everyday things like language, the study of language, like cooking, Delicious in Dungeon, or even like Hakume and Mikochi, that's probably a really good, that doesn't have like a specific focus in one particular topic, but it does have this fantastical slow life look to it, and that one more focuses on the everyday, day-to-day lives of these characters. This is, yeah, I really enjoy these kinds of stories. I really enjoy this stories about these kind of more niche topics, and linguistics is such an interesting thing. I am not a linguist, but I find any kind of study of culture really, really interesting and also very important, and unfortunately gets kind of forgotten. So if you are, whether it's like a linguist or an anthropology or history student, you formerly or just on a more casual basis, if you have an interest in those things, I do think that this is worth looking into because it does it very well. For ongoing manga, we have one. This isn't even like regular or standard trim size. This is a 7C smaller trim size one. But this is volume 7 of Kogeki Shoujo by Kumiko Saiki. This is the ongoing series about our main character who is wanting to join the Takarazuka. I am not that well versed with like all of the culture surrounding Takarazuka. My good friend and co-host Ray from Whimsical Pictures, she is the person to ask. She is very deep into Zuka fandom. But this is a story about our main character as well as a larger class of girls training to become Takarazuka actresses or performers. And for those who don't know, this is a form of theater, namely musical theater, wherein every performer is a woman or a female, at least, assigned at birth gender-wise. And so it has a very, very strict regimen of training, very similar to like a lot of the entertainment industry, and follows her hopes to becoming the top star, which in whichever troupe she's in, and the top star is like the most important actress. They get all of the starring roles, which are the starring male roles. The top star gets the like number one male role, and then there's kind of a top quote unquote female star. She gets all the top like female, typically, love interest or whatever roles. And then there's normally a nibante, I believe that's the right word, who's the secondary star, second like top male star, who gets all of the next most important male character. And then obviously everyone else in the troupe gets assigned whomever else. So it's a very, very competitive industry, and is very strict on like what you need and have to have to become the top star. And obviously people have different strengths and all sorts of things. For our main character, she grew up kind of surrounded by kabuki, which is a much older style of theater, but it's kind of the counterpoint to Takarazuka, wherein all the performers are men, and including, roles that are female. And so she grew up in that culture and wanting to become like a kabuki star, but obviously she cannot because she is a girl. And so she became enamored with Takarazuka, wanting to become the top star, and namely because she wants to play Lady Oscar from The Rose of Versailles, which honestly, who wouldn't want to be that? Yeah, and it follows, it's like a quite realistic depiction of just the very, very hard training and difficult difficult competitiveness of this industry, and how much hard work these young women have to do, and obviously the positives and negatives to that, the things like eating disorders and just all sorts of things. So there are, maybe look up some, especially the first volume, which is like the prequel slash original. This series got soft rebooted with this series, but there's Kogeki Shoujo The Curtain Rises, which is sort of a prequel to this series, sort of just like the initial version of it, which handles with sexual assault, namely within the idol industry, and then obviously eating disorders as well. So like, maybe check content warnings before you dive headfirst, but this is a fantastic series. It's a lot of fun, and if you're into like theater or acting or just performance in any iteration, this is a little bit more of a niche Japanese thing, but it is very, very, very interesting. And again, if you have questions specific to it, I am not the person to ask. I would direct you to Ray from Whimsical Pictures. She knows way more than I will ever. We have a debut Yuri. This is from Kodansha. I think this is one of their first Yuris that they've put out, certainly maybe in print, in a series that I absolutely knew I was going to get because I have been absolutely enamored with it since, enamored in it just from like screen caps of the art style. So yeah, this is Run Away With Me Girl by Batan, Volume 1. I think it's 3 or 4, I think it's 4 volumes all together in Japanese. So this is the story of 2 women who in high school were dating. And one of our main character, she was very much in love with this girl. But when they graduated, the other girl broke up with her, in this idea of like, oh yes, we're going to be adults and none of that lesbian folly, yada yada. Let's just forget this ever happened because now we're adults and now we have to be normal, which obviously is not a good thing, but so our main character, it was her first love and she hasn't ever really moved on. But now it has been, I believe, 10 years. 10 years since then. And she coincidentally runs into this other woman who was the love of her life, and finds out that she is getting married. And so she kind of has this... it's a bit masochistic, but she wants to rekindle this friendship because, the idea of like, oh, well, I don't care if she doesn't reciprocate my feelings. I just want to be close to the person I love, which is just like bullshit, honestly, like move on. But at the same time, you kind of get it. But so she's becoming this, she's trying to, rekindle this friendship with this woman that she's in love with. And whilst also trying to come to terms with the fact that she's getting married soon, and also the reason she's getting married soon is because she's pregnant. But very quickly she recognizes that this other woman really isn't happy in her situation and really is only getting married and only pregnant because of the pressure that she feels, conforming to society, and she's just willing to force herself to be in these situations in order to be quote unquote happy and again conform to the societal expectation of what women should want and what, all this bullcrap. So yes, this is fantastic. I love the art style. It's beautiful. This does have elements of cheating. It does also have elements of, I want to say, like forced pregnancy. It's a accident, but there's never any discussion of like, you know, not having the baby or adoption of, like, the idea is they got pregnant and he just proposed, and so they're just getting married because there's a pregnancy. And I say forced pregnancy because it was him who like didn't use birth control, and she just went along with it to not rock the boat. There's a lot of, it's a very, very abusive situation. Not in like, well, there is some physical abuse in this as well. But a lot of it is emotional abuse and verbal abuse. Her potential husband or her fiance, he is such an asshole. Like, holy shit, girl. I don't care like who you end up with. And you're obviously, again, she's having these problems coming to terms with her sexuality and, you know, ignoring her happiness in order to conform to society. But like, I don't care what kind of relationship you think you need to be in. Even if you're forcing yourself to be in a het romance, this dude is not the dude. He fucking sucks. Holy shit, girl. You deserve so much better. And like, obviously, this is Yuri, so hopefully she will end up with this woman who loves her and like gives a shit, rather than this absolutely just misogynist piece of crap dude who speaks and treats her horribly, is physically violent with her when he's in a bad mood, which it seems like is very easy for him to be in a bad mood. Like, it's just, oh my god. The whole reason they're in this situation is because he's an asshole and didn't want to use birth control. It's just like a not good situation at all. So yeah, fucking trigger warnings for all of that if that's something that is you're not wanting to read, which is totally understandable. But this is absolutely wonderfully done series, and I highly, just from this first volume, I really look forward to reading the rest. There are darker aspects of it, obviously, as I said. This isn't like, even though we're adults, where like the husband in that one, he's struggling, but like he's just kind of a decent dude. This guy sucks. This guy fucking sucks. Yeah, so I'm not normally a fan of like cheating in my Yuri, but oh my god, this girl needs to get away from this relationship. Yeah. If that's something that sounds interesting, sounds like something you're able to handle without too much stress, then check out Runaway with Me Girl by Batan. I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of this. Next we have the BL. First is a single volume short story collection. This is from Seven Seas. I really enjoy that they're diversifying and bringing more BL to print. And this was an interesting collection of short stories. Again, like always, some stories are better than others. I did overall enjoy this book quite a bit. But this is Entangled with You, The Garden of 100 Grasses by Aki Aoi. We have another Aki Aoi book coming to print soon, from June, actually, which is interesting. But this is the story of, well, various different stories. The main cover story is about just like a human dude, an apothecary, and this kind of monster man who lives deep in the woods. It's a little bit of a Beauty and the Beast story. He's not really captured or anything by this I don't know, beast man. Is that the right word? I don't know. I will also say this series or this book is like very, very light on any kind of like physical intimacy. I don't think any of the characters kiss at all. So like if you're wanting a more like steamy, erotic kind of book, this is not the book that you want to go for. It's much, and I hate using these terms, but like in the old language, this is what would be called a shonenai. Like it's really, really soft touch on, like it's very obvious that a lot of these relationships are romantic, but it's not like, you're not gonna get any kind of like sexual satisfaction out of this book. That's not what it's there for. Oh, actually one of the stories has characters kiss, but all the rest does not. And there's 4 stories. And that one where the characters kiss is not, like, it's good, but it's also sad. And there's kind of a lingering melancholy around a lot of the stories in this book. So if that's not your thing, then I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think this is like a must-read book. I do think it is good. I do think it is worth reading. If you're a fan of Aki Aoi, it's nice to have their work in English and in print. And I'm sure the Junei release will, if it eventuates, will also be well worth the wait. But yeah, this is not one that, like, if you're wanting to follow up a read of like Ten Dance, which obviously, like, that has more sexual, like, that's a very sexy series, but like it's not as explicit as something like even Twittering Birds or something. This is not for like you if you're wanting hardcore penetrative gay sex shown on page. That's not this book. So buyer beware, maybe. We have another 7 Seas BL title. This is a debut title, so it's actually ongoing, a debut for the title. It's 4 volumes in its entirety. This is one that I put on licensing, like my licensing bingo, and actually got. I was like, I was so surprised. But this is Barbarities by Suta Suzuki. Volume 1 is, as I said, 4-volume series. This is more steamy. It's not quite explicit yet, but I don't doubt that it will probably get explicit at some point. This is the story of kind of this noble knight who comes from a faraway land and he is such a playboy, like all the ladies are swooning for him. But he's been brought to this new kingdom to be the personal bodyguard of this one of the advisors to the king. This old man who tells the young boy king ways that he can, run the country, right? And there's also like a lot of religious conflict happening in this particular kingdom, so there's kind of a political story happening here as well. Because the other main character, he is a secular, he not interested in the religious teachings being brought into governance, etc., etc., etc. Anyway, so our main character, Adam, he comes to this land because I think he's a relative to the queen. So she invites him as the bodyguard for this advisor. And whilst he is out and about at a party, he discovers that the guy he is being bodyguard to has a young nephew called Joel, who is this guy on the left. But little does he know, he kind of really Joel is not interested in him. He kind of spurs him, finds his behavior just totally unbecoming. And Adam sees that as a challenge. And as the only person to really spur his advances, Adam kind of like really falls head over heels with Joel. He's very, very interested in him, and Joel is just not interested. But there's this whole, like, oh my god, it's so contrived, but there's a whole thing where, because they're trying to get some information or whatever, so they have to pretend like, you know, he has fallen for her. So one of the first night they meet, or like one of the first nights they meet, they end up plotting that, like, oh yes, we'll pretend that Joel really has become my lover and blah blah blah. So they practice kiss. Like, oh my god, it's so contrived. But it's also like, heh heh heh, this is good shit. So yeah, after that's all kind of a success. And they've had some intimacy with all of that kissing practice. So Adam, yeah, he's really, really zeroed in on Joel and he is interested. But yeah, Joel is just like, he's such a tsundere, but also he's like, oh my god, no, not interested. But you know, he's blushing that way that you know he kind of is interested. So anyway, we find out, or it is revealed to Adam that in actuality, this guy, this advisor, old advisor who wears like this big wig in kind of a solicitor's style, is actually just the young Joel, not quite in disguise because it's a traditional outfit, but he wears like glasses and a beard and stuff as well. So people don't, I think part of it is so that people don't disregard his advice because he's young, and he only goes out as Joel, quote unquote, every so often. Almost everyone, aside from the Queen and the King, her son, and now Adam, his advisor, know that Joel and this advisor is the same person. So yeah, there's that happening as well. It's really good. It's a really good series. The art style is really nice as well. And man, oh man, if you like kind of hot and cold relationships, or opposites attract stories, if you like tsunderes and friggin' Labrador playboys, I guess is maybe a good way to, like, he's a actual Labrador or golden retriever in a human body, but also, yeah, he's very attractive and knows it, and so is just the ladies' man. And Joel is this like uptight, very proper, but very, very bashful and adorable guy. And so I'm really looking forward to reading more of this. I knew it was going to be a series that I would enjoy. That's why I wanted it to be licensed, and lo and behold, my prayers were answered. There's also a side couple with this, and in this particular volume, and they have a bit more explicit scenes than our main couple, and a lot of their backstory in that is in this book too, which are they're very interesting. I like their dynamic as well. Yeah, Barbarities, check it out. So we have another debut BL. This one is from Kuma and from Ogretsuko Tanaka. We've seen some of her works from Sublime, but this, I think, is the first time that Kuma has released any of her works. But this is Happy at the End, Volume 1. Oh my gosh, trigger warnings for like everything, or content warnings, I should say, for so much stuff. This is a very dark story. Well, I actually really like, I like a lot of Tanaka's works. She handles a lot of very dark subject matter, But if you're fine with reading stuff like Twittering Birds Never Fly, or even Bad Boys Happy Home, if you're a regular BL reader, I would say that there's probably not a lot in this that would be, too shocking or unusual. Content warnings would be for sadomasochistic violence, and I would say probably non-consensual violence, to an extreme. Like, extreme. We don't see any of it happen, but we see the aftermath of it, which is extensive injury. There's a lot of sex work, both male and female, and underage. We have just plain homophobia, very like familial homophobia. We have drug addiction issues and mental health issues. There's a lot of dark stuff happening in this, and I ate it up. This is such a good book. I can't wait for volume 2. This is a story of our main character who, the love of his life, the boy he's been in love with since high school, has just recently got married, obviously breaking his heart and leaving him with nothing. After that, he ended up kind of flitting between various guys and he kind of became just like, I don't want to say sugar baby, but that's kind of what I don't think he got paid for it. He just was a pet. Like, he was kept as a personal pet, just slept around with a bunch of dudes until he kind of ran away from that, got kicked out by other stuff. He's a bit of a slut. And so he's really struggling. He has no job, nowhere to live, no money for food or anything. And he ends up picking up this extremely hot dude at the gay bar, who seems pretty interested. And they end up, heading towards a hotel and, all of that. And then he gets beaten about the head with a personal massager. And he wakes up a day and a half later, in the trash to the same dude. And he's like, oh, you're alive. That's good. That's a relief. And he finds out that this dude was actually like targeting him in order to get a very specific card back. And yeah, so they go their separate ways and whatever. But then our main character ends up back at this dude's, he ends up beat up again, and then this other dude finds him in the trash again, and then brings him back to his shitty, like, one-room apartment, dilapidated old apartment. And they kind of just become roommates, and fuck buddies. And then there's feelings kind of bubbling up, but because of their personalities and the various traumas that our characters have had, they're very adverse to, one of them is very adverse to any kind of seriousness of developing their relationship. He sees it, I don't really know how he sees it, but you can understand why he's very, very adverse to kind of pursuing an actual relationship, a romantic relationship with this other guy. As I said, there is a lot of dark stuff in this book. Be wary. Pay attention to the content warnings. But if you are a fan, you don't mind dark BL or dark romance or whatever, or dark themes in your fiction, if you're a fan of Ogretsu Tanaka, you know them. Like, you absolutely have come across them before, so it's probably not a surprise. Scarlet Bariko, kind of, some of her stuff reminds me of similar things. Yeah. I really, really liked this first book. Aside from Yarichin, which is her other like longer running series in print, I loved Escape Journey. I had one particular issue with it, but overall I loved that series. That one is not nearly as dark as this, but I'm not adverse to dark stories, which we will see with our next series. So it's, neither here nor there. If you are like me and you like, darker relationships and dark themes in your BL manga, I wouldn't even say the relationship is that, like, it's dysfunctional. In some ways, like, oh my god, these characters need therapy. Holy shit. And in ways, because of that, there's a toxicity there that they're trying to work through. And I think it's value in that, they're not perfect people, but they are trying to make things work. But yeah, oh boy, if you are sensitive to any of those things that I mentioned before, just be wary, maybe. But this is a fantastic book, beautiful release from Kuma. I'll see if I can, because it is quite explicit. Also, Kuma's works are uncensored, so I don't want to just open up on uncensored dick. But yeah, Ogasu Tanaka has a beautiful art style, and yeah, well worth checking out. From a beautiful release from Kuma, if you are so inclined. Oh yeah, suicide as well. That's another content warning, or suicidal ideation. Yeah, it's good, but definitely not for everyone. Finally, for manga, we have my one ongoing BL title. This is from June. This is one of my favorite series from them, and although all of the issues I have with June, this is the one title that no matter what, I will continue to buy. This is Twittering Birds Never Fly by Ko Yonoda, Volume 7. This takes place 4 years after the previous volume, and thus our main characters Yashiro and Domeki are in very different places. They've been separated for those last 4 years. Yashiro now runs a kind of underground gambling den casino. And Domeki has kind of incorporate or been brought into a separate Yakuza family. So they've been separated for a very long time. But now they are having to work together. They've been thrust together through circumstance. Both their groups are trying to find this one particular dude who basically just stole a whole bunch of money from them, or didn't pay them the money that they are owed, basically. So they have been thrust together to have to work together. And this one's actually like surprisingly okay to flip through, because there is not a sexual element that a lot of the other volumes have had, although that may change in volume 8. It's interesting to see these characters, like, see them after they haven't been together, how their relationship dynamic has changed, how they have changed, and maybe with this time and distance, their feelings may have changed, or they may have not changed. We will have to see. I love the series so much. I'm a big Ko Yonoda fan. I have all of her works available in English. And Twittering Birds Never Fly is my favorite. But yeah, it's a Yakuza manga, so it's got all sorts of dark elements to it. Again, it's one that go into with like content warning awareness, but if you like dark Yakuza romance stories, then check it out. And I think, and this is one of the few series that June does actually try to keep in print, at least recently. They've been a little bit more consistent with releases, but never trust them. Don't trust them with anything, but they have been putting out more books and have been trying to keep their older books available for longer. So if you are wanting to try it, it is easier to do so now than it was even 5 years ago. So yeah, check it out. Twittering Birds Never Fly. It's always a long time between volumes, but it's always worth the wait. Light novels, and I have a few. The first one is a debut. This is from Airship, which is Seven Seas' light novel releases. I say light novel. There's no like illustrations or anything in this. It is a light novel, but it doesn't have any illustrations, I should say. This is sort of the Demon Hunter Kijin Gentosho by Motu Nakanishi. I've read this one. I read it a couple days ago. This is a story of a boy who he and his sister ran away from home after his father tried to kill his sister, and he was discovered by this like swordsman who brings him back to his home village, and kind of adopts him. The swordsman has a young daughter who's the same age as our main character, and same age, or like maybe she's a year younger, doesn't really, similar age. And he finds out that the swordsman is actually like the guardian, specific, like, I want to say shrine maiden. I think that's the term they say, is shrine maiden guardian, because in this town, in this village, they have a, I guess, religious leader, this very specific shrine maiden who is meant to be kind of the embodiment of the fire goddess or whatever itself. And so she is not able to be seen by like any of the normal folk of the village, but she needs to be protected from demons who often try to come and steal their artifact, this very particular sword, or come kill the shrine maiden, because there's a belief that if you eat their liver or something, it grants you immortality. So each shrine maiden for the generations has had a swordsman guard to look after her. And in this case, the swordsman is this guard, and the current shrine maiden is his wife, and obviously this little girl is their daughter. Anyway, so this boy and his sister are adopted by this family. We have a time skip to 13 years later. He is now 18 years old, and his younger sister, she should be 17, but she's never really grown up. She still looks like an 7 or 8 year old, because we discover the reason that her father was so abusive and tried to kill her and all sorts of things is because she is she's a demon. She has this red eye. That's the one thing that like you can't hide if you're a demon, I guess. So she has demon blood. We don't know if she's like a full demon, but she has demon blood. And although the town like kind of knows that, they've also accepted her as this boy's sister. She's never really caused any problems or anything, so they're pretty chill. And the other girl has since become the shrine maiden. Her parents were horrifically killed by demons like several years, 5 or so years prior. So she became the new shrine maiden. Our main character became her guardian, and in the last year she has gotten another guardian, another kid from the village who happens to be the village leader's son. And although, then there's, so this book is about like that it feels very much like a foundational prequel to what this story will be. Over the course of this book, people die. The demonic sister kind of comes into her own as a demon, which causes all sorts of trouble in this town, which kind of awakens a power within our main character that he hadn't been aware of up until this point. And so from this point, our main character has basically gotten immortality. So rather than being set in the old-timey historical setting of this particular novel, it's been several centuries and it is now modern day Japan. And our main character has been given a deadline that, you know, at this point, you will find your sister, you will reconvene with your sister, and the god of demons, the demon god, if you will rise up and kind of reclaim the land for demonkind. Yeah, so it's like, if you like, I don't want to say like fantasy, but it kind of has a Demon Slayer-esque style about it. This book in particular, as I said, feels very much like the foundational groundwork for what this series will be. I'm pretty sure we will be following our main characters through like different points in time throughout history leading up to this grand finale, this grand face-off with his sister. I might be completely wrong in that, I don't know, but that is my supposition. Yeah, so I'm not going to say, like, I thought this was a solid book. I can really see this particular novel, like, if it ever got an anime adaptation, like, this novel would be a perfect, like, first core of a series. It's very self-contained, it lays the groundwork, but it has enough of an open ending to, like, continue on to more seasons. I also think that, although this is not a long book, you could actually pad it out with like various intermissions and some of the side stories that I'm sure come into this book throughout the story. It's like throughout a 12 episode series. This hasn't been announced for an anime, but I can really see this adapting very well and easily to an anime if they had the time and money to do it or interest to do it. Yeah, this was solid. I don't want to say like I loved it, because I didn't love it. I found it, I found aspects of it expected. You know, they fall very much into the genre and tropes of the genre, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not like, it's not reinventing the wheel, right? The characters were decent. It has one of the, it's a strong opener. It's a strong opener to a series that could do very well or do very poorly. I don't know, you'd have to see. I don't know if I'll continue this one in print. It's maybe one that I would check more out in like digital form. But it is solid, and if you like kind of superpowered swordsman, demon world, not fantasy world, but like, yeah, Demon Slayer is probably the best kind of comparison, maybe. That one doesn't have the time element to it, but it has the kind of sibling dynamic and friendship and this horrific old Japan wherein the supernatural coexisted or was struggling for survival in a world that eventually like doesn't believe in demons anymore. Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's not like one of my favorites, and I probably won't be continuing it in print, but it is worth trying if it is your genre of novel that you enjoy. This is another airship release novel. This is the second volume of a series that really surprised me. I loved the first volume, and this is Though I Am an Inept Villainess, Tale of the Butterfly Rat Body Swap in the Maiden Court, by Satsuki Nakamura, with illustrations from Kanayuki. I haven't read this one. I can't speak to the quality of it, but considering how much I enjoyed the first one, I doubt that I will dislike this one. This is a story of kind of a low, it's a fantasy world, there's magic. This Asian setting, wherein the emperor has 5 various, I don't want to say, they're maidens, they're potential wives for the emperor, and he has a very clear favorite. She's called the Butterfly of the Court, and there's a very clear unliked member of this court who is called like the sewer rat of the maiden's court or whatever. And so in the first volume, after a fit of jealousy, this sewer rat maiden decide through magic swaps bodies with, it is a Freaky Friday kind of setup, swaps bodies with this butterfly of the court, thinking that like, oh, he'll never know, I'll be this like beloved maiden now, I'll marry the prince, or the emperor I should say, no one will know and everyone will treat her like shit. I don't, considering she doesn't have the, part of the reason like people don't like her is because she's of lower birth, so she doesn't have a lot of the training that, you know, a lot of these other maidens have had since becoming human alive. So I don't know how she would have inherently like been successful, but due to her hatred and just like bias, she just expects that this other girl, her personality is like she cries and feigns sick, and then we'll have the emperor dote on her forever, and that's just how she's always gotten on in life, despite the fact that this butterfly maiden is very well accomplished in all handicrafts and music and singing and dancing and all sorts of things. They switch bodies, and it does not go as planned. Namely because this sewer rat she realizes like, oh my god, this girl is like chronically ill to a very dangerous extent. I feel like a good comparison would be maybe Mine or Maine from Ascendance of a Bookworm, who is through because of magic and stuff, but like she is incredibly sickly, has a very poor body, but because of the original's like gumption and personality, she's worked through it through hard work and perseverance. She's gotten to the point that she has, with her health and her, studies and whatever. So yeah, she's in for a rude awakening wherein she's like, oh my god, actually she's like really, really, really sick. And I didn't realize that she was that sick. And then also like she can't just be like, oh, I'm so sick, I don't want to do anything. Because all of the ladies in waiting or whatever, they know that the original, she would never let that bring her down. She would still do her 100 push-ups and whatever it was, all of her physical training, she would work through it regardless of her health. So this other girl is just like, oh my god, I'm nauseous, I can't see straight, I got a real high fever, everything is wrong, I am actively dying at all times, and I can't even get a break in. Meanwhile, this butterfly of the court who's ended up in this other girl's body, she's living her best life. She is so happy to be in a body that doesn't have this chronic illness anymore, which I think, like, regardless of people's thoughts on disability and things, I think anyone who is chronically ill, if given the choice, would prefer to not be chronically ill. I don't think it's inherently ableist to say, hey, this girl who has suffered with her health, like, very adamantly suffered with her health her whole life, is now, like, reveling in the fact that she doesn't have to be hyper aware of her health and what she does at every single moment, and so is living her, like, her life to the fullest, to her extent, with her newfound robust body. I am not chronically ill. I can't speak for people on the whole. Like, I am not a voice in this group, but I do, like, from people I do know who have chronic illness, both in real life and from what I've seen from advocates and things, like, it's not inherently bad to want to be healthy. It's different from a physical disability, wherein, you know, it's different from a physical disability. I think anyone who's chronically ill, if given the chance, would absolutely not want to be chronically ill. There's not really an upside to that. It's not, your life isn't worth, like, you aren't worth less because you're chronically ill, and you're not worth, respect, but it does impact your life in a negative way, and there's, yeah, I'm not going to speak to it, but, like, I would think that there's a nuance here that isn't, like, hyper offensive to the chronically ill community. But I may be wrong. You can correct me if you are someone who has a chronic illness and finds this kind of setup inherently problematic and not good. I'm here to be corrected. I'm happy to amend my outlook. In saying that, this is a really fun series, very funny. I like the characters. I like both characters. The emperor, or the prince, he's not quite emperor yet, but he's, like, a pretty solid dude. Although, like, man, he needs to figure some internal stuff out. But he's just kind of protective as well, so I can understand that. Yeah, this is a really solid series. It has a manga as well. As we know, if there's a novel and a manga, I always go for the novel version versus the manga. But from what I've seen of the manga, it's very well done. So whichever version you enjoy, check it out. Yeah, this is a good series. As I said, can't speak to this particular volume, but I don't expect it to have dropped in quality too much since the last. Last, for the light novels, we have volume 21 of Bakuno. This is from Yen Press. This is Bakuno 1935 C, The Grateful Bet by Ryogo Narita. This is, this series has been on hold/hiatus for a long time. I don't know when Narita's coming back to finish it. Hopefully that the English series is kind of caught up. Maybe it will spur him to finish it. I don't think he has any ongoing novels right now. I may be wrong on that, but I don't think so. But there's 2 more volumes after this, which is 1935 D and E. And so this is basically like the midpoint of a much larger arc. I don't want to talk too much to the specifics, but it's basically like all of the major characters from this part of the story are here. All of them. If you are a fan of any character, no matter whether it's Claire, or Firo or Ennis, who are in all of these 1930s books, or Maiza, or Jacuzzi, or his Jacuzzi's like crowd of friends, or the Gandor brothers, or if you're a fan of Lad and his motley crew, including Graham, they're all here. The Rail and like Tick and Talk are both here. There's the grandson, Kaz of the Runarada family, and the bear from last volume. They're here. The Vanishing Bunnies, I think is their name. They're here. Ricardo Russo is here along with her bodyguard Christopher. So they're like, everyone is here. The only one who's not here is Elmer, which does mean also that Huey's here. There's just like, everyone is here. Everyone is here, and they're all heading to one particular casino opening. And man, oh man, it's going to be a crazy time. Yeah. Oh, this is just like the first couple turns of the cogs. I expect next volume, and I'm pretty sure there's a volume after that, 23 volumes in all for what we have so far. I'm pretty sure that's just gonna end up one crazy. Next time the brakes are coming off. I just know it, because man, that stuff is happening. Yeah, as I said, this story has been on hold / hiatus for a long time, but with the end of like what we have, the 1930s, so I think 22 or 23 is the final volume available in Japanese. That wraps up the 1930s arc. So it is kind of an ending point, but Narita has said that he wants to write like 1 or 2 volumes, like epilogue volumes set in the 2002 setting, which is also like ongoing stories, to wrap up a lot of the to wrap up the Immortals storylines, to obviously like give everyone an ending. But the 1930s are almost over, and if we don't get any more, maybe we just have to live with that as the ending. But I do want the series to come to its natural conclusion with that epilogue. Bakuno's fantastic. I love all of the characters, most of the characters, 97% of the characters. They're a fun time. Fear is like an okay character. Like, he's an interesting character to see evolve over the course of the series. Huey's a really interesting character. Lad has a lot more nuance than what, like, if you've only seen the anime, than what you might expect. Ennis, unfortunately, she's a bit of a damsel in this. She's been kidnapped yet again, which is also always a shame, although I do expect her to do more in next volume. Ches is always interesting, like, and I love Jacuzzi and his people. Yeah, that just, and man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy that this whole arc has so much Claire / Vino / Felix, whatever you want to call him. He is my favorite character, and I love the fact that he's just him. He's just so good to read about and to watch. This is a series that'll make you fall in love with a vicious hitman, who just wants to find love, damn it. With mafioso, I should say, and Kimura, and all sorts of horrible people who murder each other all of the time, but are like deep down pretty good people. I love Bakuno, and if you've only enjoyed the manga or the anime, or if you've only enjoyed Durarara, I recommend this series wholeheartedly. Check it out. Next we have a Danmai release from Seven Seas. I haven't read this one, but this is probably NXTX's most popular title. It's a toss-up between her last two, but this is Modao Zushi, or Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Volume 4. I haven't read this, but having seen the full donghua animation adaptation and having flipped through and seen some of the illustrations and stuff, I know what happens in this book. If you're waiting for like relationship consummation, that is in this book. If you've been waiting for the sex, this is the book. You will cry. Your heart will break before, but then it will be healed so completely by the end. Next volume, volume 5 is the last one, and get ready to get wrecked. NXTX's Danmai Danmai overall can be very emotionally straining. Hers always end with a happy ending, thankfully. But man, it's a rough time on the way there. Some very, very emotional moments over the course of this book and over the course of the series. Scum Villain has finished. As I said, next volume of this will be the last one. I think Heaven Official's Blessing is planned for 6 volumes, maybe more, but I think it's 6. So we've almost got all of MXTX's library in English, which is kind of amazing. And with that, of course, we have Seven Seas releasing in other Danmai, which I have all ordered, but I haven't started reading Urha at all. My stomach just went really loud. I haven't read any of Urha at all, and I know that one's going to be a challenge because it is rough. But yeah, this one is a fantastic series. I recommend the animation adaptation. You can watch all of it on YouTube with English subtitles for free from the Chinese producer. It's 3 seasons. It's good shit. I hope we get a physical release of that someday. We're getting Heaven Official's Blessing on Blu-ray from Crunchymation, which I'm very happy about. But that one is that's the first book. It's an incomplete. Well, the first season is approximately the first English novel. So it's an incomplete adaptation. The 3 seasons of Modao Zushi are the full adaptation, or as full as you can be when you are telling a gay love story in China, produced by China. So like you're not gonna get the explicit I loves you and makes out and sex on screen. That's not in the series. Well, it's in the series, it's not in the show. There's also a live action version as well, which also has a lot of censorship and various story changes, which sometimes work, sometimes don't. I don't think they're bad, but you know, your mileage may vary. But yeah, I'm really happy that the novels are finally available, or are now available in English, and it's been interesting to see Danmai as a whole really blossom in the English readership over the last couple of years, certainly over the pandemic. And it's nice that we've seen more and more publishers, not just Seven Seas, but some of the more boutique publishers like Peach Flower House and Violacti kind of diversify and join what's available in English for fans, because there's so many There's so many popular ones, and I am not like, I don't read things. We know that I don't read web novels. I don't have time to submerge myself in all of these things that exist, even if I'm interested in them. So I, like a pleb, always will wait for the, the licensing, hopeful licensing of these things to be able to enjoy them in some legitimate form versus or legal form, I should say, not legitimate, legal form, because I'm not hunting down fan translations of web novels that I just exist on like different Google Drives and things. Yeah, check this one out. It's probably the most popular. Certainly, this and Heaven Official's Blessing are both very popular. I don't know which one's more popular. Maybe this one, just because of finished adaptations, 2 finished adaptations, and 3, because the comic version just ended as well. So you have all of the Modao Zushi to enjoy. Scum Villain only has the one donghua season. Heaven Official's Blessing has another donghua coming up soon, and it does have a comic, but they're not completed. So yeah, this one, if you're wanting to just like read something and finish it and have it and enjoy it, and then move on to some of the creator's other stuff, this one is probably the best first choice. It also has a more functional relationship compared to the other finished MXTX novel, which is Scum Villain Self-Saving System, which is good and funny. So funny. It's a satire of basically an isekai. But there's there's some dysfunction in that relationship. So check out Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, Modao Zushi, if you are interested in Danmai in any capacity. Oh my gosh, I got some novels as well, like actual English literary novels. Well, I don't know how literary they are, but I got some novels to talk about. I haven't read any of these, so I can't actually speak to them, but I probably will read at least one of these this afternoon, because it is very short. So I'll show them together. These are the newest novels from Becky Chambers: A Psalm for the Wild Built and A Prayer for the Crown Shy, both from her new series Monk and Robot. So these, from my understanding, are sci-fi stories about a robot who emerged from the woods one day. So it's set in the far future, where after humanity created robots and AI and all of these things, and they were used, for working, to replace human labor, that one day they just all grew sentience or something and just disappeared into the woods and have never been seen since. So it's been a long time since then, and one of these robots emerges from the woods and finds this, or does so in front of a traveling tea monk who I guess just has a cart, or a wagon, I guess, filled with tea, and travels and all sorts. I don't know. I haven't read it, can't speak to it. And I guess they just kind of go traveling together, and each book is about 160 pages long, so shorter than some light novels, and kind of follows a particular place that they travel to, and I guess what happens there and how they observe. I love Becky Chambers' works. I've read all of her A Small Angry Planet, the Wayfarer series. So there's a series of 4 science fiction novels, which are all in the same universe, but and have some crossover characters but are fairly self-contained. Those are absolute artistry. I love them. Very character-focused pieces. And really explores kind of this meeting of cultural meeting of cultures and distinctions from that. Hey, it's tying back to Heterogeneous Linguistica. If you're a fan of that, but are interested in like a sci-fi version of that, I guess like Star Trek and stuff are similar. It feels very much like that. Wayfarers feels very much like that. I think, yeah, Star Trek is probably a good example. This one, obviously, again, sci-fi. I haven't read them, but knowing that I love Chambers' works, I also read her short story collection. This was a no-brainer. I didn't even know they were out, so I bought them immediately, and they're very, as I said, small hardcovers, but beautifully done. And I really get... The thing I get real vibes about is Kino's journey, which as someone who adores Kino's journey is a good thing. I think this kind of observant traveler style of story would be really interesting in this setting, so I'm looking forward to this. I don't think I'll be let down. It also kind of gives me a little bit of Time of Eve vibes, insofar as just like robot awareness and just being an anthology. Yeah, I really, really, really look forward to these. I don't buy a lot of novels. I read quite a few, but I typically go to my library first before I shell out cash for them. But this was a creator, or an author, I should say, that I just have loved her work prior to this. So this was, it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even a question of whether I would buy them. Although I was expecting longer books, but I'm not, dissuaded because they are shorter. It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to getting into the first one, which is A Psalm for the Wild Built. But certainly not least, another novel. This one was crowdfunded. I say novel. It's a beautiful illustrated release of a classic novel. And I've also since helped crowdfund the other release in the series from this publisher in this style. And this is Maurice Leblanc's Gentleman Thief Arsène Lupin, with obviously is kind of the inspiration for Lupin III. He's meant to be the grandfather of Lupin III. But this is the actual novel, with various illustrations. I'll see if I can... Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. It comes with a numbered postcard for the Kickstarter edition, because this was funded through Kickstarter. It has black and white illustrations as well. I don't want to keep opening that. I also got some prints of some of the color pieces that just came. I only got the standard release for this, so these were just extras. And I also got the Lupin and Sherlock Holmes pin set, because the other one in the series is a Sherlock Holmes story. And so when I get that, I'll have that, and I'll be able to shelve them together, and I'll be so happy. Yeah, classic novel, French novel, about the gentleman thief Lupin, who, steals shit, but is a gentleman about it. And again, is an inspiration for the highly acclaimed Lupin III. And in fact, with this Kickstarter, you had an option to, I think, get a book maybe specific to this film. And also there's a 50th anniversary book about Lupin, that I think was produced, again, for this film, but you could get it additionally through this Kickstarter. This is from Magnetic Press. I don't really have any books from them. I don't know how large of a publisher they are, but I always am interested in hardcover. I don't want to say fine press editions because this isn't really a fine press edition, not in the same way that, well, price-wise, there's certainly not a fine press release. But I do like boutique releases, hardcover illustrated books with slipcovers. I'm a big proponent and fan of folio books, their releases. So yeah, I don't have a copy of Lupin, or Gentleman Thief, or Saint Lupin, from LeBlanc, so I decided to pick this one up, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I really look forward to the Sherlock Holmes book that I hope is in the matching style. Yeah. So that's the end of my January pickups. Lots of manga, plenty of light novels, some just general novels, danme, even an anime, which is not that frequent nowadays for me. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on anything that I talked about today. Have you seen or read some of these titles or books? How do you feel about the CGI Lupin film? I want to know. But yeah, it's been a big amount of books for this start of the year, 2023, new year. I don't think that I will have nearly as many books in coming months on a month-to-month basis. So I will definitely, absolutely still be getting books every month, but not to the sheer volume that this first month has been. Again, just because of the shipping issues and my comic store not getting things up until these last couple weeks, which is less an issue that they caused and more an issue of just the state of the world right now, unfortunately. But yeah, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye till then.